Greetings and salutations. Thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Wednesday, February 23, 2022, brought to you by Wilkin Depot, the country's leading home improvement and construction supplies retailer. Shop conveniently 24/7 with the Wilkin online store. Just go to shop.wilkin.com.ph. For today's editorial, EU threat is irresponsible and unfair. For the fifth time in 6 years, the European Parliament last week overwhelmingly approved a resolution condemning human rights violations in the Philippines, this time calling on the government to end violence against drug offenders and to stop labeling activists and journalists as supporters of communist rebels. Like earlier resolutions, this latest version, which was passed by the European Parliament by a vote of 627 to 26 with 31 abstentions, demonstrates a lack of understanding of real-world circumstances in the Philippines. Unlike earlier versions, however, this one came with a serious threat. If the Philippines does not address the European Parliament's complaint satisfactorily, the country could lose its trade benefits with Europe under the Generalized Scheme of Preference Plus or GSP Plus. Under GSP Plus, 6,274 Philippine export products are allowed to enter the EU with zero tariffs. The trade agreement began in 2014 and is set to expire, or ideally be renewed, at the end of next year. In its resolution, the European Parliament called on the European Commission to set clear, public, time-bound benchmarks for the Philippines' compliance with human rights obligations and to immediately initiate the procedure which could lead to the temporary withdrawal of GSP Plus preferences if there is no substantial improvement and willingness to cooperate on the part of the Philippine authorities. For a resolution that is supposedly addressing human rights, this is an atrociously inhumane suggestion. The GSP Plus is primarily intended to expand the market for agricultural products and other products of medium, small, and micro enterprises or MSMEs, as Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez properly pointed out in reacting to the news. Thus, the Europeans would punish the most blameless in the Philippine population for the perceived non-cooperation of the government. As for the latter, the European Parliament is evidently unaware that the Philippines has been engaged with the United Nations Joint Program for Human Rights since last July, which is addressing allegations of extrajudicial killings of activists and trade unionists and deaths from the government's war on drugs. According to information from the UN, the joint program provides capacity-building assistance and technical cooperation with Philippine authorities in several areas, including strengthening domestic investigation and accountability mechanisms, data gathering on alleged violations by the police, and implementing human rights-based approaches to drug control. To be fair to the European parliamentarians, the issue of red tagging, a serious problem that has emerged relatively recently, is quite troubling. On the other hand, a closer examination of the situation reveals that it has mostly been the handwork of one particularly unpleasant and unprofessional government official within the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or the NTF-LCAC, a problem that can and should be resolved relatively easily, not least for the fact that the obnoxious behavior has drawn attention away from the remarkable work NTF-LCAC has actually done in improving local communities across the country. The current situation certainly does not warrant such an economically destructive threat by the European Parliament, especially since the punishment would be directed at a segment of Philippine society that is not the source of the issues that have earned the Parliament's ire. If the European Parliament disagrees and feels that threatening the GSP Plus is justified, then it must act responsibly and make a valid evidence-based case for doing so. It has not, and it has not done so in any of its previous resolutions, instead relying on vague and sometimes inaccurate news and sentiment. No European representative would tolerate some other country taking a critically negative interest in his or her own country's internal affairs in the same vacuous manner. And in fact, we might even suggest that if the European Parliament is to persist in doing so, our government might consider responding in kind. We dare say such a response would quickly inspire a more thoughtful, less Western elitist view towards engaging with the Philippines. As it is, one would think Europe has more important things to worry about right now, with the threat of a continent-rattling war looming in Ukraine, and with several countries having just suffered substantial damage from a series of winter storms. The European Parliament should avoid annoying what friends it has and withdraw this foolish resolution. And that's the editorial for Wednesday, February 23, 2022. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.